culturally reinforced as like,
Yeah.
even in narratives that are trying to be helpful, like you can have it all, like you can work and you can be a mom and you can do everything, like you're so capable. But that like puts this pressure of perfectionism, even from like a societal standpoint, that you really
Yeah.
need to like take one step at a time and unpack it on your own to see what you actually need and want without all of that pressure.
Welcome to the podcast. This is Tracy Donegan. Today I'm speaking with Susie Guarino, an East Coast GentleBirth mom of two. In this episode, Susie shares two very different birth experiences, a Cesarean and VBAC. Susie also shares how she continues to use the GentleBirth app 4 years later to support her own mental health. And now I bring you Susie Guarino.
Hi, everybody. You are very welcome to meet Susie Guarino, and Susie is on the East Coast of the US. And Susie's going to talk to us today about the impact of mental preparation for birth, mental preparation and emotion regulation for preparing for birth. And she's going to tell us a little bit about her background, what led her to GentleBirth, and how I think 4 years on, she's still making use of the tools in her daily life. So welcome, Susie. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to have you.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much for having me. I am incredibly honored to be here. And I'm really excited and enthusiastic to speak about GentleBirth just because of how life-changing it was for me. The difference in experience I had between my two births, on paper, it looks totally different, and it's very easy to see that I went from like an epidural and a C-section to an unmedicated VBAC and just look at the black and white information on paper and say, wow, look at how successful she was. But that's not at all where my success lies,
Yeah.
because if I were to have had a repeat C-section and another epidural and everything else and all of the interventions cascading, even if that happened to me, I would have been at peace more after my second birth than my first one, just because of the difference in preparation and training and what I learned about self-talk and how I learned to be nicer to myself. I have to give a lot of credit to therapy, obviously. Like, I had a professional
Yeah.
therapist that I started working. It wasn't until 8 months postpartum after my first birth that I finally got with a professional and started to even begin to realize how rough things were. You can
Well,
really,
do you want to start with that and tell us a little bit about, if that's okay with you,
of
about your
course.
first experience and what happened during that experience that led you to really to finding professional help after birth?
Yes. So I sort of going way back, I grew up with a history of family dysfunction, and I'm a child of divorce and all sorts of things. I had been in and out of therapy for a lot of my life, and I sort of felt like I was stable enough, like I was okay. And so I get married. We move up here to Connecticut, and I get pregnant, and um, we do the labor preparation that the hospital offers, which is like a 1 day seminar of a couple hours of like, this is what physically happens to your body. And I was like, great, I feel like I know enough, so I should be fine. And
Mm.
a lot of the foundational dysfunction that I grew up with, I hadn't become aware of yet, because a lot of it was repressing my emotions and being ashamed for having emotion. A lot of codependent dysfunction and all of these things, little did I know, had sort of textbook repeated themselves into my marriage as well. So
Mm.
I'm currently going through a divorce because I came to
Oh.
realize there was like psychological abuse and like imbalances and all of these things. So I guess in short, I thought I was ready because I knew enough, and I was completely dismissive of any like emotional labor that might have needed to happen, because I was like too logical to have feelings, like all of that dysfunctional narratives. Um, so what ended up happening, I was at an OB practice that had like 11 or more different OBs. Every single prenatal visit was a different doctor. And
Mm.
like, I never really felt attended to. I never felt like fully comfortable being vulnerable and open in front of anyone there. But like, I didn't know that was possible or valuable, because I just didn't have that awareness of that emotional intelligence at that stage in my life. So I just
And
carried on.
having a relationship with your care provider is just so important. And we see this in the evidence that, again, if you have continuity of carer, you've been to see the same group of midwives or the same
Hmm.
team of OBs, you build relationship, you build rapport, and you build trust. But as you said, when you're seeing, a different person at every antenatal appointment, it's very difficult to build that rapport and be vulnerable in any way.
Exactly, exactly. And I would go so prepared with my logical, intellectual. I would have a list of questions. I would know what I needed to know, and they would answer them, and I'd be like, check, I'm doing well. I was so pleased with myself for being intellectual, just completely out of touch of emotional needs. Um, and so what ended up happening was I like had gained a significant amount of weight, so my blood pressure was kind of high, and no one really offered any specific guidance in that gradual process until it was like I was maybe like on my due date. They induced me because of my blood pressure, because they almost sent me home too. I was like in the hospital for a checkup, and they were like monitoring it for a little bit, and they were like, well, do you want an induction or not? And I was like, well, I don't really know, maybe I'll go home and wait a little bit. And then they came back to me and were like, no, actually, we've decided to keep you here for an induction. And I was like, okay, if you say so. And then it was an induction, which took like 20 or 30 hours to even get going. I like was not
Mm,
allowed to eat. So I was very weak and tired and hungry and starting to
mm.
get really stressed out. And then they did like 3 different medications to try to kickstart induction, and then things finally started. And even as I was having contractions, um, it was like 10 hours of those, and then I needed an epidural because I was too exhausted to handle any more pain, and then like 10 more hours, and it was time to push. So we're getting on at like 50 hours total here. And then like when it was time to push, it was like 3 hours of pushing until they slapped me
Wow.
with failure to progress and did a unplanned C-section. And it just so happened, of all of the dozen of OBs that I saw for my prenatal appointment, there was only one of them where I was like, oh, I actually noticed like she's a little intense and makes me a little uncomfortable. Like she's just a little severe in her bedside manner. And I hope of all the dozen of people I have available to me that she's not the one on call. And guess who was on call for my
No.
birth? And she, like when I was pushing, she would say things like, I was trying to do breathing exercises just from my past as a musician and a music educator. Like I have like diaphragm awareness and I
Right?
sing and all of these things. So I was doing what I knew to be effective in my body. And she was yelling at me like, hold your breath. What are you doing? You need the pressure. Like stop exhaling in the way you're exhaling. And she was like, she even said at one point, get angry at your baby and push him
Oh,
out. And I was like, I'm so scared. Like that was not helpful for me. I was a very fragile and insecure person back when I was 28 or whatever I was, having my first baby. And so I was just scared, and I didn't have a good match with the person who was there, and it was an unplanned C-section. And then like the what's most striking to me is that I didn't know any better. I didn't know what was possible in regards to emotional support and kindness and compassion, even for myself, towards myself. I spent
mm,
8 months postpartum after a pretty traumatic birth being largely unsupported by a husband who was also kind of taking advantage of me, kind of like psychological abuse. Like I remember thinking he had a few weeks here in America, like 4 whole weeks off for paternity leave. And like by the end of that, I honestly remember thinking like, this is crazy, but I can't wait until he goes back to work, because I'd rather just deal with this baby than myself than have to manage both a baby and his needs. Like I don't it
mm.
so not to, sling too much mud about him, but it really was a challenge for me. And I just, growing up with this dysfunction that I grew up with, was not aware that I could have anything better. And so I spent 8 months being extremely anxious, rather unsupported, and extremely depressed without even realizing how depressed I was.
Mm.
until I don't know what it was, but I finally got myself into professional therapy, and she was a perinatal specialist, and she started to unpack this stuff with me. And it was at first largely about healing from the trauma of the unplanned C-section, like calling myself a failure. I had been calling myself a failure my entire life. I had been critical my entire life and never paid any attention to it. I was like, this
Mm.
is just how I get ahead. Like, this is just how
Yeah.
I'm disciplined and I accomplish things, and I have such a strong work ethic because I better not fail and I better be perfect. And like, you can't survive motherhood if you're that mean to yourself.
You can, but not in a way that's going to be healthy or helpful for you or your family and those
Hmm.
around you.
Yeah, so all of this stuff sort of started to be revealed to me as I was healing from what I came to realize was a traumatic birth. And I came to start to realize um, a lot of stuff about my past. And she like I had not yet realized the dysfunction in my own marriage. And I knew I wanted to grow my family a little bit more. And so she like right away recommended finding a doula, finding a midwifery practice, and starting GentleBirth. Like she knew about GentleBirth. I think she's like certified, or at least she directed me to a doula who was certified in the classes.
Yeah.
So I just
Perfect.
like totally my entire care team was totally different. There were
Mm.
people who were recommended, people who I came to have a rapport with, I came to trust. I knew them and they knew me. I even did prenatal pelvic floor physical therapy, which was huge as someone who
Mm.
had started to get into fitness. Really, I think like right before I became a mom, I sort of started my fitness journey, and then going through what I did with that first labor and birth, and then being able to exercise a little bit afterwards, just the ups and downs of all of that is a very similar journey. Like my self-talk journey and my fitness journey almost go hand in hand with the ups and downs and the realizations and the growth there. So, but then how did we So I started classes with my doula, and I even have, like right here, are the notes that I took from that very gentle birth class about neuroplasticity and all of these things, where I
Gorgeous.
came to learn that I was more in control of my emotional state. Um,
Mm.
I can actually share. Do you want like a specific story from my time in that class of like a
Yeah,
epiphany
please
moment for me? Yeah. Oh,
go for it.
I it was as I was learning to accept that I was, in fact, an emotional human and that my emotions had like meaning and value. I was in the gentle birth class and we were watching a video about this woman who just in complete peace like breathed her baby out, and she didn't look like she was distressed or in any sort of pain at all. And I was like legitimately triggered. I like started crying and I had to leave the room because my brain was so loud in saying like, I could never do that. I am incapable. Like, that is inconceivable. That is impossible. I will fail. That is too scary. Like, birth is too scary. I just can't do it. And I had like such a meltdown. And I came to realize that I needed to have this overhaul in the way I thought about myself and in the way I thought about the value of emotional labor. Like I started to realize that I needed to address feelings and care about feelings and care about
Yeah.
myself, because I just had this breakdown in the middle of class, and I couldn't go any further in my learning unless I confronted that hurdle of emotional awareness and tending to my emotional
Mm-hmm.
needs. So that was huge for me, and I started to unpack all of that, and I started to use the app every single day, like twice a day for the 5-minute meditations. And it was mind blowing to me. Like as someone with all of the dysfunction I grew up with, I sort of needed that external voice, your voice, in fact, Tracy. Like I needed someone who I could view in a position of authority, who knew more than me, who could make me better, like because I couldn't do it myself. But then like your voice was there being that authority, but also using such nice words, like such inviting, compassionate words to say, like, you know, this is absolutely going to work for you, and it's going to work for you because you are the one who, like,
Mm,
calm, confident, in control, all of those lines, really absolutely changed my life and the way I conceived of myself. Um, and my favorite thing about mindfulness is that notion that you can't fail at it.
Hey there, if you're enjoying this conversation and are passionate about making the transition to motherhood as easy as possible, the best way to support our work is to subscribe and share this episode with other amazing women in your life. Your support to us is so important and helps us reach more mothers with empowering content. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button and spread the love.
Because a
yeah.
huge part of my narrative was being a failure and not being good enough. And so when I was
Perfection.
perfectionism is so damaging, so toxic.
So, yeah, and
Um,
so common, unfortunately.
yes. And
Yeah,
it's even, like, culturally reinforced as, like,
yeah,
even in narratives that are trying to be helpful, like, you can have it all, like, you can work and you can be a mom and you can do everything, like, you're so capable. But that, like, puts this pressure of perfectionism, even from a societal standpoint, that you really
yeah.
need to, like, take one step at a time and unpack it on your own to see what you actually need and want without all of that pressure. Um, so these
I think
mindfulness
part of though
tracks.
what pregnancy does though is, and your experience speaks really well to it, is that we're most of us, and I'll throw myself in here as well, is that we live at this surface level of rational thinking, and especially in society, like we are, we're supposed to, we should have it all. We should have the career and the kids and the PTA, and that's what was society is telling us. And rationally, we're trying to squeeze all these activities in. We're not even pausing to think, what do I want? What
Yeah.
do I need? And I think when you're in postpartum and so much of we have lost so much control over what we thought we had control over. You can control your schedule to a certain point, but when baby arrives and your body is doing all these weird things, and it it touches you in such a deep level that you have no other choice but to either connect with that deeper part of you, that
Mm.
inner wisdom that we all have, and make it easier for yourself in postpartum. Or we can try to take our antenatal lives, our prenatal lives, and push that into postpartum. It's like, yeah, this baby is here, but how difficult can it be? It's just a little person, and I'm
Yeah.
just gonna they're just gonna fit in, and my life is just gonna go on perfectly. And I think that postpartum experience really, it's an invitation, I think, for us to take a breath and
Mm.
really evaluate our, where we've been, prenatally in our lives. And now we have this little being that is dependent on us, and inviting us to slow down a little and just pay attention to what's going on here, because
Hmm.
we live from the neck up for so much of our lives that we don't even know what's going on below unless there's something wrong. And we're
Hmm.
very disconnected from our emotions and from our heart. And because showing emotions, like even these days, showing emotions as a woman, it's like it's weakness, and it's you're over emotional, or
You're
whatever that
hysterical. The
negative.
word
Yeah,
hysterical.
hysterical. It's like so we have, been conditioned to rein in our emotions, to rein in our feelings, and really to act like, no, and I don't say act like men, because I would love to get to a point where men feel comfortable
Uh-huh.
sharing their emotions and their
Yeah.
feelings and not living at that surface level as
I
well,
mean,
because
act like
it's something they're
robots.
doing all the time.
Let's call it robots. Like, we're
Exactly.
we're
Yeah.
not we're expected to be
Autopilot.
inhuman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. We're not recognizing the humanness, but please continue. Yeah.
Yeah, and what that calls to mind for me is this whole concept of intuition, which I could speak to so much as a mom and a woman, not only because of gentle birth and getting in touch with my feelings, but also, like I've mentioned, because of the abuse that I've been through. Like, I went through psychological abuse where I was like gaslit constantly,
Mm.
and he had like narcissistic tendencies, and so like any of my questioning myself would be taken advantage of, so he could just have more and I would give more. And
Yeah.
I was conditioned to disregard my intuition, and I was conditioned to disregard my needs, both from, I mean, my I was raised by a narcissistic father and a codependent mother. And so, like I said, textbook repetition of that dysfunction in my own marriage. And just like we can speak to the importance of intuition in pregnancy and postpartum and mothering. And as it turns out, the importance of intuition is the same, if not more valuable, for someone who has been through dysfunction or suffered from abuse and is recovering and healing from all of those things. So when I say gentle birth changed my life, it's not just because I learned this stuff for motherhood. It's because I escaped dysfunction and abuse thanks to the overhaul that it afforded me when I was invited into this place of pausing and getting in touch with myself. And it's truly wild. Again, not to overshare too much of the mudslinging dysfunction, but like when his control over me started to get questioned in my pregnancy with my second child, like I started to say, like, I am interested in seeing if a chiropractor can help me feel better. Like, I do want to have lavender aromatherapy. Like, I would like to make a box of affirmation cards and have this like ritual. I still use it, right? This is my box that GentleBirth taught me to build, where I have like a smell and affirmation cards and like jewelry that I put on, and I have like my rituals that I go through that I've cultivated to rebuild the pathways in my brain to feel better about myself, to really capitalize on those quiet moments of getting in touch with my feelings and reaffirming positive feelings. I started to do all those things, and he would get more and more critical and more questioning about, like, why do you need that? There's no science behind that. I don't think this is like, I don't know how I feel about a VBAC for you, so let me do the research on this. And like, you started to kind of see the more empowered I got, the more threatened he felt. And it was, I think, a year postpartum of my second child that I finally confronted him and said, like, I think I like came to terms. And in April of 2020, which was less than a year postpartum of my second child, I approached him as well. And I said, I think what's going on here is emotionally abusive. And you're having, I mean, with all the good faith in the world, maybe naivete, I don't know. But I said, I don't think you're trying to do this, but this is the impact it's having on me. And he was like, no, I'm not. You don't have any evidence of that. And, you know, the story continues, and just constant denial of the dysfunction and abuse that he was perpetuating. And now we are in the midst, actually, we're almost finalized in our divorce. So I have gotten away from that, and I feel like I've escaped it and become a healthier, far more complete and healed and confident and empowered person, which began as gentle birth only and extended into all of those aspects of my life. So I can't say thank you enough for it.
But you did the work, you know, and something that I just, for anyone who's watching here today and you're wondering what gentle birth is, or are we, you know, promising pain-free birth, or really gentle birth is the actual birth itself is just a small part of it. It's really about preparing you, as we always say, you know, for the best birth possible as you define it, as mom defined it. So as you mentioned earlier, if your second birth had been different and it had been another cesarean, or there were, you know, it wasn't what happened with your VBAC, you still would have been in a much more positive place, because our focus is on that emotional regulation and tuning into yourself, trusting your instincts, and that brain training, you know, we're building new neural pathways in the brain.
Yes.
This is not woo, because you do see some of these accounts out there, you know, for promising pain-free birth, or that has never been our jam. It has always been about, yes, birth is a transformative experience, whether that's positive or negative, but we can stack the odds of it being an emotionally healthy experience, because as we see the birth trauma rates going up, we see more need for, let's just put the actual birth outcome, how baby arrives, aside just for a moment, and let's just help build mom's confidence and trust in herself and her own.
Just build healthier people, like as a person, just build her up. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
exactly what it was. That's why I freak out about it so much, because I'm a different human than I used to be, because of the whole process with it. And I can speak to more details. It's a really strong point you make, that I could have had the exact same birth on paper and the emotional outcome would have been different. Because, so like, do you want a little more details of my second birth story?
Sure. Please.
Okay,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
yes. So I had a totally different team. I had the, therapist, pelvic floor physical therapy, midwives with only like 3 women in the practice. I knew all of them. Um,
Lovely.
and yeah, and there was even a time where like one of the midwives was a little bit harsher to me. Like I was just feeling really fragile and emotionally sensitive, and she was giving me great advice because she saw that I was also gaining weight kind of out of control, like, which is exactly what happened in my first pregnancy. I sort of out of control gained weight, had high blood pressure, led to all the stuff. So I out of control, I was beginning that process of out of control gaining weight, and the midwife like offered me some advice, and she put me on like baby aspirin just to like preemptively keep blood pressure in check, and she was doing all of these like compassionate strategic things. But and I took her advice, and I like changed my diet, and I actually in my second trimester of my second birth ended up like over one of the months I like lost a pound, which was crazy, but baby kept growing. So I
Right.
like thanks to her advice I was a lot healthier, but I also had this emotional reaction in the way that she gave me the advice, that I took back to my therapist, and I was like, I'm actually acknowledging that she made me feel a little hurt or a little scared in the way she was telling me, like, don't even eat a banana. It's just as bad as a Snickers bar. And I'm kind of freaking out because of this perfectionist baggage. So, like, how do I navigate? Like, I want to take her
Mm,
advice because it's healthy, but I got a little shaken up about this.
mm,
And, thanks to my therapist and the team of midwives just being a different atmosphere, I literally
mm.
went into my next appointment with her and like felt empowered enough to say like, you hurt my feelings and I don't think you're wrong, but I just want to let you know that that approach was a little scary for me. Can you kind of treat me like a baby? Like, can you just acknowledge that I'm a little fragile right now because of what I've been through? And she was like so receptive, and like I think I was even able to, like, I still like love her as one of the 3 people that I met with, but for the appointments from then on, like they scheduled me with a different one who
Mm.
ended up being the person who was there to catch my baby. And so like even having the confidence to navigate those sorts of trickier dynamics, like, no, gentle birth and midwives don't promise that every bedside manner is perfectly compatible. Like, you might still have those hurdles and those tensions or discomforts in your journey, but
And if
the
you
way
don't have it in your journey, it's going to happen in the supermarket or when you're driving. It's like people can be assholes, and maybe they don't mean to be. But
uh-huh.
if we can learn how to not take everything personally and like water off a duck's back, and it takes practice, but we can get to a point of, okay, and maybe reframe it. She must have been having a really tricky day, or that she was at a birth all night. And when I do that, I'm like, okay, so I try to explain it away. If it's some random experience, if it was repetitive, then we'd be having a little come to Jesus. But
Yeah, yeah.
but I've learned that for me, that mindfulness and the awareness of, oh, that's really upset me, but do I need to take this upset now into the rest of my day
Mm,
and let it affect my parenting and my relationship with my partner because of one silly thing that was said that I've taken the wrong way. And
mm,
it's when you have that awareness of noticing, oh, that hit a that hit a sore point. Here
mm-hmm.
is there, and what can we do about it? But having that awareness in the beginning is just, and then being able to go back, and again, these practices, they are cultivating courage,
Yes,
and
that was
courage
my
for
point.
life.
Yeah.
Not just to have difficult conversations, but courage for life, because life is tricky.
Yeah, and I think I was early enough in my stage of like coming to terms with having feelings that my therapist advised, like, please speak up about your feelings, like advocate for yourself. Like, this is so
Yes.
new to you, and you're so like vulnerable and raw in this awareness of your feelings. Like, verbalize it and process it and go through it. And so that was part of my prenatal journey with this practice and my second baby. And there were just so many things that like I came to similar hurdles and just leapt over them very differently. So the weight gain was very differently approached, and I was able to sort of like feel more confident and navigate that. And then my daughter, my second born, was like 13 days overdue. Or maybe 11 days overdue. And like the discussion of, do we need an induction, started to happen. Like I had an extra ultrasound so they could check on my placenta, and like they were starting to talk about like maybe we just schedule it and see, like just in case it needs to happen. And I was able to, instead of just like not caring, not engaging, not knowing anything, not being confident enough, and just leaving it all to someone to tell me what to do, which is what happened in my first birth. I sort of like stood my ground and like thought about like, how am I feeling? What am I needing? I am like really freaked out by this. Like I was like calling my doula, who was very emotionally supportive, and like working with the midwife, and like had this sort of like challenging but peaceful and confident process to say like, okay, like I can schedule the induction for this day. And I got it scheduled, and literally like 12 hours before it was scheduled, here comes the contractions. It was so wild. And so like, and it's not the fact, like GentleBirth didn't promise me that I wouldn't have an induction. GentleBirth promised me that I could navigate if I needed to have an induction. And I made those tough decisions. I came to the fork in the road where I could have either freaked out and had a negative experience, or like processed it and had a positive experience. And I did that. And then lo and behold, I went into natural labor anyway. And so same thing. Then I had 8 hours. It was only 8 hours. I'd labored largely at home with my doula. I even like, each surge brings me closer to my baby and my family. Like all of these affirmations, like all of your, like you were talking to me in my ear, and I was just like so at peace and confident. I was taking one surge at a time with the mindfulness, knowing that I like couldn't fail, because mindfulness is simply the awareness of one moment at a time. It was such a positive experience that like it started to get like more and more intense. And I told my doula, like, I think I might need to go to the hospital. And she was like, okay. And like, I don't even know how many hours later it was, but I was like, oh, didn't I say I was going to the hospital? And she was like, yeah, maybe let's actually do that now. Let's go ahead and do that. And I ended up, there was also the hurdle of getting into the car, and that very much threatened to take me out of mindfulness, because I started to think ahead. I was like, oh, I have to walk down the stairs. Like I'm in my bedroom upstairs. I have to walk down the stairs. Like I have to drive half an hour. Like, I don't know. And GentleBirth sort of allowed me to like use the skills to come back to the present moment, to be like, I don't need to think about step 2 or car driving. I need to think about exactly what I'm feeling right now. And so like that was navigated with a lot of confidence. And by the time I got to the hospital, it was maybe like 45 minutes before she came flying out of me. And I remember like, so it was completely unmedicated. And I remember when it was time to push, like within those 45 minutes at the hospital, I was thinking like, boy, I'm really tired, and I would be okay if this were over soon. But instead of like someone shouting at me like, get angry at her baby, hold your breath, start yelling, I chose my own narratives. And I remember like I knew that I was going to name her Rosie, and so I was like talking to my baby in these moments of being tired. I was like, Rosie, you and I can do this together. Like I know you're working and I'm working, and let's do this together. And it was like, the never in a million years would an OB have said that to me. Even the midwives who I had a great relationship with, like they wouldn't have known the exact emotional angle that I needed in that moment to like find my power. It was really like my internal work, like my emotional responsibility and accountability to myself to feel and know what I needed. And then Rosie and I sure did work together, and I got that VBAC. And again, it's not the fact that I got the VBAC on paper. It's the fact that I would have been okay regardless, because Rosie's birth was not without complications. Like I did have sulcus tearing on the way out. I hemorrhaged a whole lot of blood. I needed 2 units of transfusion. And like, as
Wow.
she was like on my chest, like as soon as she rocketed out of me, and they put her on my chest and I was nursing her, and like I did not even care. Like the midwife was down there, hand attempting to stop the bleeding, like by hand stitching, and I was just like so thrilled about the success of how I felt
Yeah.
and how it felt to be with Rosie. I like didn't even care. And oh, one of the most striking stories, like the midwife couldn't stop the bleeding. I nursed her on both sides and I was still great. She was like, I think we need to like knock you out and put you into actual surgery to stop this bleeding. And I was like, sure, who could care? Like, that's fine. I feel amazing. And so like all of those
Wow.
positive feelings about my baby, and even like postpartum, so I'm still in the hospital. I'm getting my transfusion of all that blood put back into me. And one of the nurses was like looking at my chart and she was like, oh, like, it's so funny that even though you didn't need a C-section this time, you still had to go into surgery. And like, that struck me as a very like inappropriate and insensitive
Mm.
statement. Like she was trying to make some sort of little joke about it or something. And I like thought that it
Mm.
was weird and then didn't care, which was amazing for me. As someone who has been as fragile and sensitive and all these failure narratives that I used to have, if I had heard that after Joey's birth, my firstborn, my son, if someone had made some sort of like offhanded small joke about like, look at this thing that went wrong, or this thing that
Mm.
you did not good enough, or like any of those implications
Yeah.
would have like gutted me and ruined me after, like if I was, you know, Susie of previous years, would have been really devastated. But that nurse made that joke and I was like, psh, I don't care. I feel amazing and Rosie's
Yeah.
amazing. And I know that I was like confident and empowered this entire time. So,
Mm.
yeah, it was incredible, and it's not because it was an unmedicated VBAC. It's because I was in touch with my feelings and I was mindful and I was more prepared and I was okay with everything. Yeah.
That's amazing, amazing. Even I think it's so important for moms to hear that that whatever birth prep you're doing, that having some kind of emotional, mental prep
Hmm.
is so important, because that knowledge transfer, which is what most moms will do, they'll go to the class and they'll read a couple of books and watch some YouTube videos and they feel like, yeah, I'm ready. But that's again, that's surface level knowledge. Because
Hmm.
as you know, when you're, in the hospital system, you've got a lot of stress happening and anxiety, and unfortunately that shuts down the part of the brain that we need for making informed decisions. And in the event there was a big decision does come up, that you want to have the skills that you can calm yourself down so that you can bring this, executive functioning back online
Hmm.
to make those decisions, and make whatever, the decisions you can make to the best of your ability, because we tend not to make good decisions when we're in a state of stress. But I really, for me, the magic of gentle birth is that you you can cultivate these skills. You can cultivate self-compassion and
Uh-huh.
courage. It's like it is a practice. Nobody sits down at a piano and plays,
You mean like
Beethoven the
this?
first time. Exactly. You
I'm a
know?
music. Oh my gosh, I could speak to that entirely because I am a musician and you're absolutely right. Like the art of practice. So like I know what it is to practice music and to have the like the discipline of like focusing on what, like just my right hand and then just my left hand and one step at a time and then putting it together. And like I was aware of all of that, but I didn't fully appreciate or realize how much it could transfer into mental health skills, because I also like, I've been very spiritual and religious my entire life. And so when I was in college, I was attending a lot of different like um, mental health and spiritual related things. And I had done some mindfulness stuff where I had like explored meditation. And I was like, this is really cool and it's great, but I didn't have it as a daily discipline or a practice. And so I didn't realize how it could become more of a lifestyle daily thing with the discipline of daily practice. Despite what I know as a musician, like I just didn't put that together that it could transfer into mental health work. And it wasn't until I was pregnant and I had this like the trauma to work through of my first birth, the unbeknownst to me, the dysfunction and abuse that was hindering me from like fully realizing a lot of healthier mental things. I just had all of that to work through, and I had the sort of, like you said, the invitation, the opportunity of this pregnancy. Like I have 9 months, and then this baby is coming out one way or another. So that's really like a chance to sit down and focus. And I did the meditation tracks, like I said, I did them twice a day, or like once a day for the first half and then twice a day for the second half. And I like had this epiphany that like you can't fail at mindfulness, and mindfulness is an art of practicing where like you get better at it the more you do it. And it's so encouraging to do it more because like even on the days that you are frazzled and you don't want to practice and there's too much in your brain, that's when you make the most progress, because that's when you catch yourself every 10 seconds. Like when your brain is more frazzled, you're going to get unfocused more easily. And so that's like such a perfect opportunity to sit down and do it, because all of those catching yourselves is just making you better and better at mindfulness. And it all sort of like came together for me as a musician and a spiritual person and a mental health person when I was afforded the opportunity in this like focus time, this focused phase of my life of pregnancy, which I'm also so thrilled about, because as I learned in the class, like pregnancy is a highly neuroplastic time in your life. So it's like, I feel as though I was being so efficient. Like I was taking such good advantage of what my brain was ready to do and building all those connections, and like absolutely transformative, just to take skills that I knew about in some realms and apply them to other realms, and practice them until it became something that I was more aware of as a lifestyle, and then to watch it evolve from pregnancy to labor and delivery to nursing and postpartum to removing myself from an abusive marriage to getting back into fitness and like to getting more like healing from childhood and marital dysfunction and drama and all of that and trauma, and becoming a more empowered person, like getting back into hobbies that I enjoyed, and like starting to get leadership positions in these hobbies, and like starting to like just for fun do like leisure projects. Like I if you don't mind, could like plug a little bit of the stuff that I do.
Please do, yeah.
Because like I feel as though I could not have gotten to this place of confidence and leadership and empowerment if I didn't go through this transformative process. But now like I got back into fitness, and then I like freed myself from this dysfunction. And so I am now a single mom, but it does afford me some of these like days without my kids. Like we do have legally shared custody. And so I have like every other weekend some time to myself. Tracy, you would not believe the journey I had to go through to learn to have free time, to learn to like relax and allow myself enjoyable leisure activities, and to sort of like recover and heal. Like all the GentleBirth stuff I learned about having a baby was somehow then applicable to like just be nice to myself, like paint a picture, like do an exercise. Like I could have never afforded myself that kindness and space and enjoyment of leisure activities if I hadn't gone through the self-talk overhaul that GentleBirth gave me. And so I have grown so much in what I do for fun and who I am as an individual. Like GentleBirth made me a better mom and a better like pregnant person, and also allowed me to get back in touch with who I am as Susie. Like, yes, I am Susie, a mom, but I'm also Susie, an athlete. I'm Susie, a musician. I'm back in school to do physical therapy stuff. Like I'm learning. And so like it's also cool because all the stuff like neuroplasticity and like I just studied the nervous system, and I was like, yeah, all that checks out. Like that's all like legitimate science behind this stuff. And like I have the project that I'm working on right now is very, very nerdy, but it's so much fun. It's the most fun I've ever had, is this hobby called live action role playing, LARPing. which
Okay.
is, and like, I couldn't allow myself to enjoy something that fantastical and like almost like seeming like childish in its imaginativeness, but it's also like collaborative storytelling, and it's like an athletic competition too. It's like, I don't know if you're familiar with like a Renaissance fair and like a
Yeah.
sport. Yeah, so it's like a Renaissance fair and a sport and like storytelling all smushed together into this like fantastical weekend getaway. And like
Okay.
I allowed myself to engage with that. I started LARPing in college, and it was my favorite hobby right away because of all the cool, fun community storytelling outside, playing in the woods, putting on costumes, being silly. It was
Yeah.
just amazing to do. And I like sort of lost touch with it a little bit as I like was in this dysfunctional marriage, and I became a mom, and like my life absolutely changed a lot, but I was able to come back to this hobby that I love so much and like step up, and like I now am the community manager for one of the chapters, and I write plot. Like I'm one of the people who directs and produces the events that go on, and I like entertain other people with this activity. And I even started like just for fun. Like I don't feel like I have to prove myself to anyone. It's not something that I'm being a perfectionist about. Like there's no pressure to do it, but just for fun, I have like a fitness LARP YouTube channel, and I make a bunch of content about like exercising and playing this game and writing this fantasy world and enjoying yourself with like a strong mental health and like a gentle, compassionate allowance of like,
Yeah.
you can enjoy fun things and be your own
Hmm.
person. And even it's funny, the catchphrase of Alliance LARP is be everything or be all that you can't be, because it's a fantasy story. So like you make
Ah,
characters, and you
yeah.
get to explore all these different aspects. And so that's like such a big part of my life now that I can really embrace wholeheartedly without any shame, that I'm allowing myself this free time and this leisure activity. I'm not ashamed about enjoying myself anymore. And I also don't have
Yeah.
this perfectionist, like, I have to produce this in order to prove to people or in order to be good enough that people consume this. Like, I'm literally just making a fitness YouTube channel and writing fantasy stories for fun because I'm allowed to, because I'm nice to myself and I've learned that I deserve nice things. And it's
Yes.
so great.
And it's and you can see it in your energy, that it is, and isn't it such a strange thing that we've lost this capacity for fun, that life just, we have a baby, it's like, oh, that's it, life is over now, it's all real serious, go start planning for college. And and as women as well, we don't we it's not like, fun is important, playtime is important.
Hmm.
But we kind of like get so, we kind of put ourselves in these little boxes of, now I'm a mom and it's all serious, and yeah, and we
Honestly,
don't, that self-compassion is so, it's just absent. And it's a big part of GentleBirth. It is being, how can you be kinder to yourself and speak to yourself in a, like, how can you speak to yourself the way you would talk to your little girl or your little
mm,
boy that was, if he
hmm
was struggling. And we, like, if you listen to your own self-talk on a regular basis, if you just notice like how we speak to ourselves. And I think I've blogged about this before, the fact that when we are mean to ourselves, and it's specifically the tone that we use towards ourselves, it's almost as if we are being attacked by somebody on the street. And if you can
hmm
imagine how someone shouting abuse at you, some stranger shouting abuse at you, could be quite like stressful.
hmm
We are doing the same thing to ourselves day in and day out until we catch it. And when we catch it, we have that awareness, then we can do something about it. But
hmm
it's so many, for women in particular, the idea of self-compassion has just been associated with fluffiness or weakness. And because you gotta beat yourself up with that stick, you gotta be firm,
mm,
and kindness is weakness. And like, no, compassion is so important as a new parent, to,
hmm
because the perfectionist tendencies are just sitting there. They're like your little gremlins. They're like, oh, this is making me
I
feel
call them
how you're
gremlins and
gonna,
weasels.
yeah,
Weasels in my brain.
Tracy, how are you gonna mess this up now? And
Ugh.
I'm like, what? And it's, yeah, we just take this voice so seriously. And Dan Harris talks in one of his podcasts and talks about, this, when he notices that negative self-talk, and and his reaction is not to push it away or, punish himself even more. It's like, oh, there you are. Because I call it my evil twin. Oh, welcome to the party. So I have an awareness. Tracy, can you be a little softer today? And it's just that knowing, okay, Tracy, you're actually physically causing yourself damage if you allow this self-talk to continue today. So why don't we just do something nice for yourself that would be kinder as well? And everybody gets to benefit from it. It's not weakness or fluffy in any way. And there is so much science around self-compassion practices now for body image, and just, it's an emerging field. Like the mindfulness, I feel like when we're practicing mindfulness, it's very cerebral. It's focused attention, it's awareness. But the self-compassion practice just brings you home to your body and brings you home to the whole of you. Really.
Can I tell you how, like, appropriate, like how topical it was to take, like, everything you're saying about bringing you back to your body and like being awareness and all of that. Like, yes, it was important in the pregnancy, labor, delivery and all that. But when I started using those skills on the treadmill, like as I was going for runs and getting more into fitness, like you have to be so careful, especially as a mom recovering postpartum. Like, you need to be so in touch with every little aspect of your form and your body. Like, ooh, am I a little heavy on my heels? I'm going to hurt my ankle because I'm carrying my weight differently. Or like, am I feeling a little unstable in this way? Like, how can I walk and scale back? And all of those little like snippets of awareness that you need to exercise in a healthy way. Like, for those to be presented to your own brain in a gentle and kind way, like, as opposed to like, oh, your heels are hitting so hard, you're doing terribly, you're gonna fail, you're gonna hurt yourself. Like, why would you talk to yourself like that when you're trying to exercise? Like, say like, like, the difference between yelling at yourself and then saying like, oh yeah, you are a little tired, it's okay to be tired, your heels are a little bit heavy, like, why don't, like, let's explore other strategies, you can stop whenever you need to and that's okay. Like talking to yourself on a treadmill is so similar to talking to yourself in labor. And just like what a difference it is when you are nice and kind. And like the way that has sort of had this like upward spiral of like, because I'm nicer to myself, I can go a little farther. Like, when I'm mean to myself, my body gets tense and I shut down and I have to stop running and I can't. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, I didn't even make it my 5K. Like, I had to stop after 2 miles. I feel terrible. As opposed to like, if I'm nice to myself, I can actually like be gentle and say like, okay, I can explore a little bit more. I'm doing great. I feel good. Like, I feel good when I'm nice to myself. And then I can like do a little bit more exercise. And then like, maybe I still don't make my 5K, but maybe I make it 2.5 miles. And then even though I didn't make my 5K, I'm suddenly feeling like encouraged and uplifted. Like, it doesn't matter that I didn't make my goal for my run that day. It matters that I was nice to myself and that I'm encouraged and I come away with this emotional atmosphere of like, I could tackle this again. Like, I'm excited to get on a treadmill again, as opposed to like, I never want to touch that machine again because last time I was on it, I was so mean to myself. I felt miserable during and after. It's the exact same skills.
And when so many of us, and I've gotten better, I think, in the last couple of years, but I think so many of us see exercise as punishment. So if you're already coming from that aspect of got to get my 5K in today, and then something comes up for whatever reason, life happens, and you don't do the 5K, and then you're just so hard on yourself, or else we push it down and we don't listen to that voice saying, you're a little bit hard on the heels today, we might want to, explore that.
Yeah.
And just push it away and push through. And I think, again, as women, we've been conditioned that ignore what your body's telling you, literally, unless your arm is falling off. Push through, because I'm a mom. I have to push through. I have to sacrifice for.
We have period pain all the time. Pain is normal for a woman. Like, never pay attention to it, never take it seriously. It's just something you have to cope with. Like, the grit and resilience that women have is absurd. And like, it's so like, admirable and inspirational and powerful and important, but like also like it can absolutely tip that scale into damaging and destructive, because it can become a very mean and pressuring narrative like that. And so like finding that balance of like embracing the power and confidence you have as like a strong woman who knows how to, like, you know, the mental discipline and the tenacity that we all have, while still not being mean to yourself or pushing past pain, because before you know it, you're gonna like pull a quad and then you're out of it entirely. Like I've pushed myself to the point of injury, and that's not better. Like it's not better to you're not doing anyone any favors. Like a lot of my fitness mentality has, as I've, you know, gotten older and become a mom. I'm like 34 now, so I'm not like some like spry young athlete. I'm like a mature mother who also happens to be an athlete. And like a lot of that perspective is about sustainability and longevity. And so much of the gentle birth skills, what they give you, like what you've been saying, you're not just focusing on the day of the birth. You're focusing on building and growing and uplifting this woman, this mother, for lifestyle skills for the rest of her life. Again, goes perfectly hand in hand with like, if I'm approaching fitness for sustainability and longevity, I'm going to approach it with these gentle birth skills that keep me feeling good and empowered and positive, like for the practice of the day-to-day lifestyle. And when I'm nice to myself on the day-to-day, whether it's music practice, my school studies, my LARPing hobby, and my fitness channel, the healthier heroes is what I call us, healthier heroes LARP fitness. Like no matter what I'm working on, that perspective of day in and day out, every moment, awareness of the kindness of my self-talk is just like perpetually encouraging. And that has been transformative and life-changing since becoming a mom.
And it's sustainable. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we look at the mental energy that we spend on, if we are on autopilot and we know that our brain tends to go to worst case scenario, that's just, you know, default setting. Go to worst
Awfulizing.
case scenario. Yeah, and that, yeah, catastrophizing, everything is
Mm.
awful. To be able to step out of that and activate a different
Mm.
circuitry in the brain, like the oxytocin and that nurturing system.
Mm-hmm.
It's you're conserving energy. It's like, and it's why, you know, when we're stressed, we get sick more easily. So it's like,
Uh-huh.
okay, as a new mom, I'm already bloody exhausted. I'm
Yeah.
not sleeping. So postpartum, if my mental focus is on everything that's going wrong or everything that I perceive I'm doing wrong, you're using up so much of mental energy that you
Mm-hmm.
could be um, reinvesting in yourself
Mm-hmm.
and in your baby in those early
Yes.
months when you're just exhausted. It's like, but you don't add insult to injury. You know, if you
Yes.
have these skills, you have a chance. You're going to free up so much mental space so that you can thrive as a parent rather than just,
Uh-huh.
you know, digging in and gritting your teeth to try and get through
Oh my
postpartum.
goodness. That's so true. That's so real. And like it is very like tangibly manifested. I keep going back to my experience exercising and recovering postpartum, like on the treadmill, like a literal real time manifestation of that draining of energy. Like as soon as you're mean to yourself, like all my muscles are like, well, I'm done. Like I cannot continue to put up this fight. Like you want me to run? Are you serious? You just beat me up. Like you were so mean. I'm not going to keep running. Whereas like if you're nice to yourself, like you feel like you're like floating a little bit more, and then you can just like
Hmm.
keep going. And
Yeah.
like what a cool tangible example of that concept, right? Like when you are mean to yourself, you drain your energy. When you're nice to yourself, you invigorate yourself. And
Hmm.
it like I cannot emphasize enough. Like I literally experienced that physically happening in real time on a treadmill based on how my body was literally feeling.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize that we have this capacity to choose our thoughts. Now, of course,
Mm-hmm.
thoughts bubble up, but not that we have our capacity to choose. We have capacity to choose where we direct our focus when it comes to thoughts.
Mm.
So as you know, thoughts emerge out of nowhere, and as they emerge, they're going to generate emotions. So as this thought is coming up, whatever it is about, you know, I have a prenatal today, and I'm really worried because the OB was talking about induction last week and maybe doesn't have a great bedside manner. And it's so easy to just go down that rabbit hole of there you can feel the anxiety building, and I know he's gonna not listen to me, and we're
And what
already
you're
because of those
envisioning,
defaults.
you're
Yeah, you're mentally
envisioning it.
rehearsing it.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
mentally
It's what you
creating
practice.
this.
You're practicing it. Yeah.
So why would you do that to yourself? So
Uh-huh.
I think so many people don't realize that you can make a decision right now and say, okay, is this thought helpful? And as we say in GentleBirth, is what I'm focused on now, making it, whether it's that, Facebook post or a video I just saw or a birth story I'm about to listen to, is that going to make me more excited about my upcoming birth, or is it going to make me more anxious? So you have to, it is about directing your attention. So you can let your attention just drift off to worst case scenario and all the things that we can imagine could go wrong, or you could be intentional about your focus and say, okay, that's not really helpful. It's making me feel really anxious and stressed. So
yeah, like I choose to let that go.
Yeah, it's not about suppressing feelings or ignoring them. It's like, that's interesting, but it's just literally some neurons firing in my brain, and it's part of that default setting. So
yeah, like it exists.
I don't have to stay there. I can just come over
that's
here
one of my favorite lines is like, I don't have to craft a story around that. As someone who has done a lot of repressing feelings and intellectualizing and like trying to be that robot perfect human, I don't have any feelings. I'm too smart and analytical for that. Not true. We're all humans, but like, something that's very tempting in the mental health wrestling and the hurdles that you go through is to notice that negative thought and to like immediately get super analytical about it. Like, well, where did that come from? And why am I thinking that? And how do I unpack that? And how do I process that? And like maybe for some of the bigger traumas, you do need like professional support to work through it one step at a time. But there's so much in the little moments of the day-to-day life where you can have some sort of negative thought and notice it and then say like, I don't have to craft a story around that. I don't have to make that a whole big can of worms or like a whole chapter of my book. Like, that was just a thought. It isn't necessarily a fact. And like, I can let it go without beating it to death and unpacking and untangling everything. It's not necessarily true. And like, the more, and like I said, maybe for some of the bigger ones, or if you're earlier in the process, you might need some extra focus to take yourself through the steps one at a time to untangle things that are really too big and too clouding in your brain. But the more you untangle things, the better you get with that skill of untangling, until all of a sudden you're like, well, that's not even a knot. Like, I don't even have to approach that as if it's tangled. Like, I've untangled so many things. I can just be aware that that might just be like, whoop, and it doesn't need a whole session of untangling. It just needs to be let go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Michael Singer. He has
I don't think so.
I think you probably enjoy his book, and for anyone else who's interested in this kind of more deeper work, he has written a book, he's written several books, The Untethered Soul, and it is about, just being a human and how we don't have to adopt every thought that goes by, and we don't have to buy into it. And it's, if we can notice the thought and go, oh yeah, and again, if it's not, this is not some big trauma we're unpacking, but this is just those little moments,
the day-to-days,
but they string together and they're building this fabric then of,
they become a knot. Like, if you let them, these little things that are not actually knots, like they're just little threads that are flowing by in the wind. But if you can't let them flow by, even if they weren't like a big trauma knot to begin with, they will start to catch and they'll start to get tangled, and then it'll be compounding. And then every little negative narrative of your day-to-day thought, and then by the end of the day, you do have a huge knot and you're like, well, I don't know what to do about this. Right. So it's like, it's what you let build up also.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic. I am so glad that we've connected again, and
yeah,
we've
thank
had
you.
A chance to chat again. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing now. So you're teaching music as well, and you're back in school, and
yes, it's kind of like everything on my plate at once right now. It's a little much, but I have my son is in first grade and my daughter is in preschool. I'm doing the single mom thing. I'm at the tail end of a divorce. I am moving in a few weeks, so I'm a little nervous about that, but I did find a house for us, and so we're going to get everything like divided and settled within the next month. Um, so that's definitely a heavy stress for me, but again, GentleBirth is helping me cope because I'm still literally listening to the meditation tracks like regularly, if not daily, especially like patience, right? So the patience one is so good because at this stage, like I can't move until it's moving day. Like I can't pass this class until I take one chapter at a time. Like I can't reach the end of all of these really big milestones I'm in the middle of working on aside from just letting them happen one day at a time. So I listen to that patience one like a lot, and just to be like, today is the day that I sign the lease. Next week is the day that I get the boxes. Next week is the day that I move the boxes. And I just have to, and it's very stressful. It can be very stressful to sit in that tension of fretting about when there's so much on your plate for the very near future. But you just can't. It's devastating if you let yourself sit in that fretting and that tension all day, every day. So instead, just listen to 10 minutes of patience and then like move on. So,
Yeah.
um,
And it
so,
is, it
so
is those practices that when people say, oh, I don't get mindfulness, or I don't want to, sit and meditate. It's those few moments. It's just investing that time in the day, that 5 minutes or 10 minutes or however long you like to meditate. It's like, I always say, it's like filling up your gas, your
mm,
car at the gas tank. You don't use the gas at the gas tank. You're doing the meditation so that you have that extra energy, you have that attitude
that's
for when you
sustainable.
go out, so you can go out into the world and then bring your best self with you,
Hmm.
and it's that for me personally. I know if I start the day off with my meditation, it sets the tone for the day. And yeah, I
Hmm.
know stuff is going to come up, but I feel more grounded, and I'm not going in 20 million directions, because as soon as you wake up and you kind of, you have a couple of seconds of kind of downloading, and then it's like, okay, here we go, So it's like, rather than diving into my day before I'm even out of bed, it's like, okay, can we just take a moment and find something to appreciate,
Hmm.
and kind of and direct my brain in a way that's going to be helpful for me and everyone else that has to deal with me today.
Yeah,
So
no,
Susie,
exactly.
I want to ask you, so we're going to have lots of moms who are going to be watching this, who are undecided about their next birth, experience. They're deciding between VBAC or a cesarean. So as a VBAC mom, what tips would you give? So a VBAC, someone who's considering VBAC that's watching today, what would you recommend for, creating that team, creating that mindset? What would be your kind of top tips for these
Oh
moms that are
boy.
watching?
Um, Definitely find the right support team, and acknowledge, like, be aware of the value of your support team. Like if you're not comfortable with your OB or your practice, like if you don't feel like a connection with them and that you can be vulnerable and have like intimate discussions with them, like they might be uh highly competent doctors and all of that, and they might be
Yeah.
very good at what they do, but if they don't have the right connection with you, that's going to be a stressor later on. You're going to be lacking something that is helpful for a VBAC. I think what helped me the most in the VBAC is all of the emotional labor, like my ability to feel comfortable and confident and at peace was in large part the support team that I had. Like I had a doula, I did the GentleBirth, I knew and appreciated like personally all the midwives in like the three midwives in the practice I was in. And I even did some pelvic floor physical therapy prenatally, and I did a little bit of chiropractic prenatally, and I looked into like aromatherapy for lavender and things like that. I guess maybe another part of it, like good support and good variety in your options of how you can kind of like soothe yourself and feel empowered and relaxed. I it's funny. It's funny to say, like, I feel like I should be giving you all of these like medical like intellectual points of advice. But what comes to mind most is just the fact that I was so much more relaxed for my VBAC than I was for my first birth. Like, I feel like the relaxation and the emotional state I was in, like, that's what made the difference for me to be able to, like, open up and let this birth progress and let it happen naturally, was the oxytocin, the calmness, and the feeling of comfort and empowerment. Is that a decent answer? I don't know if that's technical enough.
Yeah, no, I wasn't looking for a technical. it's because everyone will build a toolkit based on their
Mm-hmm.
individual circumstances and what they like and dislike. But it is always interesting to hear from moms, especially if they've had their a VBAC,
Yeah.
what really helped to get you there. And I would
Oh,
yeah.
I have another tip I just remembered. Very, very much like we've talked about how this process is a sustainable lifestyle. It fills up your gas tank so you can like carry on in your day-to-day life. It's those little moments of practicing and those little like rituals that you cultivate. So two of my biggest like emotional processes that I went through. I don't have the poster with me. It's at another place right now, but I had this like big open like trifold poster board that I would like print out a picture of my best friend or like print out Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings because he inspires me. And like every
Right.
day I would find like something else that I thought was really uplifting or inspiring. And I would have this moment of like building. And I didn't sit
Mm.
down and do it in one day in 3 hours. Like there's no cramming. You can't cram mental health, right? You can't cram emotional intelligence in like a one session of preparation. Like it's those little, like I'm going to 10 minutes a day,
Mm.
print out one more picture, put it like I'm going to write a scripture from the Bible down here today. And like, that's all I'm doing on my poster today. And like by the end of that, like gradual process of building up this poster, I had this like beautiful thing I could open up and look at. And I just remembered like every single day how I took a minute to feel strong and capable and uplifted. And like all of those feelings, all of those neural pathways were kind of like built in and triggered when
Mm.
I then opened up this poster and saw all of it. So the poster was a big one. And then, like I said before, like having this box of like a helpful little ritual, like it's got, I would like once a day, I would like make myself a card. And I would just like, this would be when I was feeling good, I would make myself one card and then it goes in the box. And like, this is very much a GentleBirth line right here.
Love
That
it.
like, and I didn't make a dozen cards in one sitting. It was the little moments every day that I would add to this box. And so now every time I open this box, like all of the feelings that I've poured into it over time come like rushing out for me. And I'm just like, I feel so good and so capable and so empowered because I've invested gradually this practice of cultivating those rituals. So a little box of affirmations and a big poster of visuals. Those were two
Mm.
huge things for me that like really felt good.
I love the vision board, and it's
Yeah.
when I'm not very crafty, so I have various vision boards that I just do on PowerPoint, But
Mm,
there is something about when I'm talking to moms about creating this vision board, that there's something about actually sitting down, looking through a magazine, and finding like that a beautiful picture that resonates with you in some way, and
mm,
cutting the picture out and adding it to the board. So when I'm talking to moms, I say find an image or scripture or something that speaks to you. And the same
mm-hmm.
with the music that you might choose for labor, because I'll often see moms saying, what music should I listen to? And like, music is so powerful, but it's so personal. So
Uh-huh.
what makes you feel really good, I'm like, no, thank you. So finding, music that's meaningful for you, that you have
And
associated memories with as well, is
yes, yeah, like
so
personal,
helpful.
intimate. And like,
Yeah.
what's crazy is like, even the way that you presented that question, like moms come to you and say, what should I listen to? Like, what a wild statement that is. Like, first of all, shoulds are shaming. That's like shame-based thinking. And for moms to come to someone and say, like, please just tell me what to do. Like, I was absolutely there. I still struggle with this, like, deference to authority,
Mhm.
people who I assume know more than me, but like no one knows more about you than your own intuition does know about
Mhm.
yourself. So like no one can tell you what music is going to make you feel most strong. Like that's for you to explore. And if you're not in touch with that part of your heart and that part of your mind, like it can be cultivated. You can become in touch. You can acquaint yourself with yourself through the daily
Yeah.
practice of like, maybe I just take 10 minutes today and listen to a few songs and
Mhm.
see how they make me feel. Like I just have to like unplug from the rest of the world for 5 or 10 minutes and like gradually cultivate. You're not going to build your whole labor playlist in a 5 hour cram session of like, what music is best?
Yeah.
Like, that's not what it feels like.
Let's find a list on Spotify somewhere, Yeah.
And because other people have said this is best, I'm going to study this and do this like this. Like no, you're going to take a few minutes, listen to a few songs, like reflect and think about, and then like listen to your heart and add like 1 or 2 songs that day, and then do it again next week when you have another moment to relax. It's the gradual building has been a huge takeaway of what GentleBirth is and has done. It's the gradual like lifestyle habits that it builds.
Yeah, and it's a tool. That's what I think. It's a
Mm,
tool that, and I think if you use it frequently and apply it not just in those moments of when you're like the on cushion meditation. So when you do your 10-minute meditation and maybe you listen to some hypnobirthing at night, but it's how you apply it during the day and starting
mm,
to notice, oh, I have this like weird thought pattern that everything is going wrong, or I'm not good enough, or skinny enough, or whatever
mm.
the enoughness that is, that you just start to catch it
Yeah,
and
or even,
notice.
oh, I gotta make sure I say, even like you can start to catch and notice the I'm not a good enough mom, or like I'm too anxious, I'm damaging my kids. And then like it was so funny to me and so powerful to me when I first caught myself like saying to my children, I was like, okay, let's control the controllables. And like in
Mhm.
my parenting to like use these lines that I learned from GentleBirth, because you can get so caught up in all of the stress of what it is to be a parent and how you have to take care of these little humans, especially as a single mom. Like it's
Oh
there's
yeah.
a lot of pressure and it's all on you. You're the only adult in the room with these little humans who depend on you completely. Um, to to realize that you are benefiting from the gentle birth skills, and then to sort of like allow them to influence your parenting, to take some of the same lines about self-talk and control the control. It's my favorite one. Control the
Yes.
controllables is
Yeah.
what I tell my kids, because
Mhm.
my, like I said, my
Mhm.
like my 4-year-old, she's like got just the biggest personality and like the most confidence and the most grit. Like she's got a physical disability and she like is such a fighter and like amazing at everything she does. And she needs to be kind of reined in almost with this notion of control the controllables, because she will try to take over the entire world. She'll be like, I'm in charge of everything. And like, that's great. That's great. But
Mhm.
I can also kind of see the wisdom of control the controllables and like, well, Rosie, like you do have to go to school today, so like let's control the controllables. Like where can you find, like I'm so thankful that you want to find this power and you want to be independent and like all of these positive
Mhm.
personality traits that my wonderful daughter has. But we still, in raising these children, you got to like find the balance and help them temper expectations. And a lot of those phrases are just very helpful in parenting too, in like
Yes.
unexpected ways. Like they creep into your parenting. You're like, oh, this is actually really wise and really, topical and pertinent for whatever parenting challenge I'm facing today, like in teaching it to my kids. Like Rosie now knows she can control the controllables and she's able to be like, okay, so I can't take over the world just yet, but I can take over this aspect of my world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. And I think before we started recording, we talked a little bit about this, about I think how really fortunate your kids are that
Aw.
you have grown so much and put so much work into and there's this phenomenon called post-traumatic growth, because we tend to focus on post-traumatic stress, but there is this phenomenon of post-traumatic growth where that event can trigger a cascade of growth, and
I've
curiosity and
ne-
exploration.
I've never heard of that, but that's like absolutely
Yeah.
exactly.
But that I really, your kids are so fortunate that you are such a conscious parent, and that you have, done so much emotional labor yourself that,
Oh.
I mean, they're, even if they do, face mental health issues, it's not an uncommon thing. They will
Mm,
be coming from this such a groundedness, that they've grown up in this family of trusting their intuition, that their mom has just taught them all of these amazing skills, because I want to see these skills taught from the day they go into preschool.
yeah.
Self-compassion, like, help kids regulate their emotions. As adults, if
Hmm.
we can't regulate our emotions, how are we expecting kids to? So let's give
Hmm.
them the skills that as their brain grows,
Hmm.
they can be nicer humans to themselves and to the world around them, and we might have a nicer society. if we
Exactly. And it's so like poignant to me that like I have benefited a lot and grown a lot with gentle birth and mental health and all that, but I'm absolutely not perfect. Like I struggle like regularly, like daily. Like I'm medicated for my anxiety. Like I have the mental health issues. I do what I need to. And like my kids see me in like moments of panic or moments of escalation.
Mhm.
And it's so poignant to me that we move through that together. Like when I'm having some like flare up of some issue or I'm really stressed out, like I verbalize what's going on and I talk like the self-talk that is happening in my head. I just say it out loud and I say like I need some breathing exercises. And I just know that it's, in some ways I'm sure it's not ideal that, I have anxiety and they're exposed to that or whatever, but in other ways it can be really positive that they see the work it takes to go through
Yes.
like mental health struggles. And I think like I will sit with my son Joey when he's having a meltdown and like we'll just like they even know the language. Like I'll say like, do you want a co-regulating hug? And sometimes when they see me panicking, they're like, mommy, do you want a co-regulating hug? And I'm like, these are
Oh,
like, I try to be careful. Like these are my feelings to deal with. And I am like, you don't have to parent me. Like I don't want to parentify my children, but I'll say like, I am capable of managing my feelings, but your support is so helpful to me. Like, thank you. Yes, I would love a co-regulating hug. And then we like breathe together and we can like when they help me through it and I help them through it, it's like we're learning together and that's like really kind of magical. Like I'm still the
yes.
parent like teaching, but I'm also trying to do my best to teach by example as well. And they like see it and I don't stifle it or hide it or repress it anymore
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
used to.
Yeah. And that's huge. They see mom, they see us in all our glorious messiness and
Yeah.
imperfections, and that's just life. This is, if you're looking for the perfect mom, keep running down the street. You might find them, but I don't know that they exist. But I think for kids to see that, the reality of life can be tricky. Mental health can be tricky, but when you are kind to yourself, when you have a couple of tools that you can use to help yourself, it is a game changer. It is life changing, really, when we have those
Absolutely. That's what I
skills.
always
And
say. And
oh,
yeah,
your kids, I can just imagine what your kids will be like in school. They'll be you know, just a nurturing presence. And
I
when
hope.
you look at your kid and you think, look what I did. Like, and I think, as parents, of course we're delighted when our kids do well in school, and they get an A in math. You're like, great. But I want the A in math is not as important to me as, can you be nice? Can you be that
Yes.
kid that invites the other kids to come sit with
Yes.
you? For me, that's the ultimate parenting goal. Can I raise nice human beings?
Hmm.
Really? Can I do that? And if I can at least give it my best shot, then I feel like that is my parenting goal. I want to see them be successful, absolutely, but I think if we can be more just conscious and think about, okay, what am I actually sending out into the world? Because I'm sending a big
Hmm.
part of me, and I want the best part of me going with my kids into
And
school every day.
honestly, all of these like positive traits for children to have, like respectfulness and politeness and all of those things, like that starts with what self-talk looks and feels like, right? Like if you are kinder to yourself and you have more positive self-talk, you're going to be you're going to have an easier time getting along with other people. You're going to be more resilient in the face of, some adult telling you no because you have to do something. Like if you just have that foundation of self-talk, it turns you into a nicer person because you're nicer to yourself.
Yeah.
So I think it's really powerful that like I am practicing like learning positive self-talk at the same time that I'm teaching my kids to try to aim for positive self-talk, and then we practice it together.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Susie, thank you so much. This has
Oh,
been
thank you.
absolutely lovely. I really I love to chat to the moms who've used the program, and especially because it had such an impact on really on your life, and I
Yeah.
hope it will continue to as well. And
I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. Like I said, I have a lot on my plate with like the divorce and the move, with the music teaching and the physical therapy studying and the LARP activity that I am working on. Like there's so much on my plate in like every day, and the short term and even the long term to try to figure out that like this is still what keeps me grounded. Like this is still what fuels me up to be in a positive mental health place. So I am sure it will continue.
well, thanks for joining me today and spending so much time with us. We've kind of gone a little bit over than we had
Oh,
planned, but
sorry.
it was
I
no,
could talk
no.
about it all day.
This is the problem. So could I. This could be like a 3 hour podcast. But thank you again. It was really lovely to connect again and chat about your experiences and your lovely two kids,
Yeah, thank you.
Joey and Rosie.
Joey and Rosie, those are my
Joey and
babies.
Rosie. Gorgeous.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Tracy. I honestly, I can't thank you enough because it's been huge in my life. And I appreciate like whatever you need, whatever I can do to like help, whatever like you need. Like if you need me to talk about GentleBirth more, let me know and I
No,
will.
this is it, and it, again, I always come back to it's. I want to hear from moms who have who haven't had the picture perfect 2 hour
Hmm.
labor that
Mm.
and the brilliant midwife, and I want to see how this works in the real world. You want
Right? I
all
mean,
the
that's what
pros.
life is all about.
Yeah,
Life is all about the journey and the growth. Like nothing is like social media, like nothing is that fake perfect thing that
hmm
social media would have us believe. Like
yeah.
the entirety of life is about the journey and the growth. And I'm thankful that, this is part of my story. And thank you for letting me share my story. It means a lot.
Well, thank you again for being here today to actually to share that story, because I know it's not everybody likes to get on camera and and share
I
each
don't
of the
mind.
details about,
I'm too
but
much of an extrovert. I could.
I think our audience will really appreciate everything that you've shared with us today. So thanks again.
I'm so glad. I am so glad. Thank
Thank
you
you,
for doing
Susie.
what you do.
Thank you, and keep doing what you're doing. And we will, of course, include in the show notes all of the all your YouTube links and information on where people can reach you if they want to learn more as well.
Sure, perfect. Happy for that.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Remember, empowerment begins with knowledge. If you enjoyed our time together and want more content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. So stay inspired, stay informed, and until next time, take care of yourself.